Greetings collectors and welcome to today's retro game review. You join us in part 3 of the Sega Saturn Capcom Fighter miniseries. In the last episode, we saw how X-Men Children of the Atom had shown the Street Fighter series how fighting games should be done on the 32-bit consoles. Big, bold and beautiful, X-Men had thrown the gauntlet down to the Street Fighter team to create an even better experience. In early 1996, the Sega Saturn would receive Street Fighter Zero, known as Street Fighter Alpha outside of Japan. Whilst not drastically different from the previous Street Fighter 2 entries in the series, there was definitely evolution here. The graphics have had an overhaul to a more appropriate 32-bit colour palette, the animations now more fluid and original stages added. Perhaps one of the most noticeable elements are the new characters: Birdie, Adon, Guy, Sodom, Nash and Rose. The game features only 10 playable characters without using unlock codes, so there's a clear shift away from the classic Street Fighter 2. From Street Fighter 2, only Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li remain, with Sagat now not considered a boss. Interestingly, Guy and Sodom arrive from another Capcom masterpiece, Final Fight. This was an early sign that the Capcom universe was beginning to overlap and knit together as a single entity. More on this in a later episode. Of the new characters, I find Rose perhaps the most interesting. Up until now, female fighters had all been quite stereotypical. Rose the Fortune Teller, though, starts to branch out the types of fighter represented in the series. So, how does it play? The answer? Very well indeed. If you're used to the Street Fighter 2 series, then you'll have no issues at all in transitioning to the Zero Alpha series. The Sega Saturn edition is always best played on the Sega HSS 104 control stick. I've mentioned it before, but I can't recommend it enough. If you have a 6-button arcade fighting game in front of you, then this is perhaps the best option you will ever find. It's solid and built with the arcade in mind. It really is a game changer and so important so that you can roll semicircles for faster Hadoukens and Shoryukens. You're really going to have fun with this game. It very much feels like classic Street Fighter 2, but with a modern flavour. The combo system in itself isn't new to the series. However, the extent to which you can pull off manual and semi-automatic combos has been greatly refined. If you're the type of player that plays the points game, then there are bonus points available for ending on a super combo finish. It also looks rather impressive. In terms of a physical release, Street Fighter Zero is a bit of a mixed bag. The back cover works well with the game fighters. The main cover though, I'm not overly fond of, at least the Japanese edition. The Alpha editions just seem to capture the feel of the game a little better. On the Japanese cover, Ryu looks the part, but Ken looks far more feminine than he's usually portrayed. The ponytail doesn't help, but generally he looks a bit different to normal. Nothing game-breaking at all though, and the cover is at least reasonably memorable. The manual makes up for this, as we see Ken kicking Ryu and much more representative of the Ken we all know. Chun-Li makes the game disc, and the overall presentation feels solid. The manual is really well put together with movesets for all the characters and some very nice illustrations of the characters. It's in the manual where you discover the movesets for Vega and Goki, known as Bison and Akuma outside of Japan. These characters are unlockable and become playable. There is also the character of Dan, who is also unlockable via a code. As a game, Street Fighter Zero set a new bar for the series. It was one of the faster, more colourful entries to date, and really nothing to complain about at all. Sure, we had lost some of the classic Street Fighter 2 characters, but we had gained some new ones in their place. The improved combo system, special moves, power bars and crossover characters all subtly shifted Capcom's fighting game offering to the fans. These weren't dramatic changes, but little did we know, Capcom were not only programming games, but programming us in preparation for where they wanted to take their games in the future. With Zero landing in January 1996, it then came as a welcome surprise that Street Fighter Zero 2 would also be arriving in the same year on the Sega Saturn that September. Capcom were taking things very seriously, and there was a real push to get people's minds back on Street Fighter. Rival series, such as SNK's King of Fighters, had become well established in the arcades and Sega Saturn by this point. Zero Two needed to not just slowly evolve the series, it needed to innovate. Join me in the next episode as we take a look at a rather excellent sequel, Street Fighter Zero Two.